Don't miss out. Earth, Wind, and Fire are set to light up the stage with their timeless hits and electrifying performance. Secure your tickets now to see them at the Ledge Amphitheater on August 10th and get ready to groove to the legendary sounds of this iconic band. Get all the details now at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
This timing is extremely bad. My soup is still warming up in the microwave.
Just say, you haven't eaten yet today, have you?
So now the bell's about to ring. And then it's going to sit in the microwave for 15 minutes and get cold again. So here's what we have to do. Either you have to get up and get it for me, serve me like we're at a restaurant, or you have to tap dance while I go get it. Because I can't let it just get cold again and then reheat it again and go through this, and I'll never make it through the show if I'm famished.
Is it done now?
Yeah, it should be done right now.
All right. Will I burn my hands grabbing onto it?
Yeah, you might. So what I did is there's a couple of paper plates there. Just slide it onto the paper plates and then bring it in here.
Okay.
Oh, and don't forget the spoon. Yeah, wait. Yeah, grab me a spoon, too. I'm sorry, Teneby. I shouldn't do this. You shouldn't eat on the air. Hey, I take a working lunch. That's what I do. Minnesota Timberwolves last night played the team with the best record in the National Basketball Association, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I found this hard to believe when headline, Chris Hine, Fish Wrap Factory West Side. Slow starting Timberwolves lose 128-107 to Cavaliers in one of the season's worst losses. Sub-headline says All-Star Anthony Edwards scores 44. That's his third consecutive game with 40 or more. But Cleveland scored the game's first 16 points. The Wolves' defense wasn't any better than the offense. Thank you. It's awful nice of you. Thank you, Garcon. The Wolves opened the night 0 for 16 from the field. That's the first time that's happened in any NBA game since 2004. Teneby, that's historic almost. That's 21 years since any team has started 0 for 16 from the field. It's the worst start in a game in franchise history. Here's what Finch told the reporters in Cleveland. He goes, I just love this. I didn't like much about us tonight. Our start, we missed shots. I thought we would figure out how to get into the game. I didn't like our toughness tonight. I didn't like our offenses at all. I thought it just bogged down. The switching did some of that too, but I didn't think we were super intelligent on that side of the floor. I didn't like our resistance when it mattered. We've played way better than that. There wasn't a lot to like about tonight. That's in every single category that matters. The team just wasn't there. And I wonder, if you, and look, they're missing two of their starters. I get that. Julius Randle's out. And, I guess,
Conley?
No, the other guy that's injured. DiVincenzo. He kind of became a starter his last few games before he got hurt. They wanted to kindly, I think Finch, and probably rightly so, decided to start DiVincenzo and then use Conley in spots, use the veteran in different situations, and don't have him start the game anymore. And I know you're missing a couple of your key players, and you are playing the best team in the league, but it almost feels like they fell behind 16-0, basically said, well, now, in golf, I'd go back to the first tee and replay it again. I start out with the double. That's like starting out with a quadruple bogey, being down 16-0, right? Or going 0 for 16 and being down whatever they were. That's the equivalent of a quad. I'd go back and restart. They can't restart. So it was almost like, well, we can't restart. There's really not much.
I don't even know if double bogey is appropriate. It might be triple, quadruple bogey.
Did I say double? I meant to say quad. They were down 16-0, never threatened after that. The Wolves finished the first quarter only 2 for 21, and were down 30-12. They shot 40% for the night. Ant, who returned, he missed Saturday's win over Portland. He had a hip injury. He finished with 44. It was his third consecutive game over 40 points. He finished 8 for 15 from three-point range. That's over 50% last I checked, Tennessee. But no other Wolves player had above 13 points. It's hard. I mean, that's the old climb on my back, and it's pretty hard. I mean, he scored, what was it, 40 or 40 what? 44. And he's still with 44 points. It wasn't. Usually if a guy scores 44, you figure their team probably won, but he was getting no help at all. And here's what else Finch said. In the story, they talk a bit about how, Mobley finished with 20. This is a solid game. I mean, it's not 44 points, but Mobley, he was 28 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks, 2 steals. That's a professional game. That's a guy he's playing both ends of the court, and he's dialed in. Donovan Mitchell had 23 on 10 for 14 shooting. Cleveland shot 51% against a Wolves defense that was a step slow most of the night. I'm just telling you, people get tired of hearing this, and they think that I'm crazy and that I'm picking on the NBA in general because they don't think I particularly care for it. Look, I've said this before, Tennessee. When the NBA's played at its highest level between two teams that are really good and are playing how they're capable of, it's like Beethoven's Ninth. Cleveland, it's like watching the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra in 1964 playing Beethoven's Ninth. It's very similar. I like the NBA. I don't love it. It's not my favorite. But when it's played well and teams are giving the old college try, even on the pro level. But I'm just telling you, if you're a step slow, Cleveland is good, but it's not. If they're that good and you're going to be a step slow, then you may as well not even accept a berth in the playoffs if you qualify. Just say, you know what, we can't play with that team. There's no sense to even play. I just believe that's like you got off to the bad start. You know it's not going well. They're a really good team. You're on the road, and you're just basically, well, this one's over. Just put this one in the loss column, and then you just kind of don't give it the old 110%. Despite Edwards' performance, Finch had some criticism for Ant, too, which you'd find strange on 44 points. But he said Finch also didn't like the Wolves' ball movement, even as they shook off the early offensive drought. He pointed to the team's 17 assists as a lack of sufficient ball movement and playmaking, specifically from Edwards, despite the high point total. Here's what Finch said about Edwards. That's not nearly enough, meaning the 17 assists. You got to move the ball. I think Ant got hot, got some good looks, and got to the free throw line, but we need him playmaking for his teammates at a high level as he can do. So, again, I don't know and it's hard to criticize a guy. Well, I do it all the time, but when it's the third game in a row, you had the one game off because of the hip. It's your fourth third game in a row that you've played that you've scored over 40 points. But, again, and obviously the other offensive players weren't helping. Nobody else had more than 13 points. But I think what the coach is trying to say is, if you remember, for much of last year, it's been going on for a couple of years now, it seems like, where teams have decided we'll just take Ant out of the game and we'll let the other people beat us. So we're going to try to deny him the ball. We're going to try to get a hand in his face. We're going to try to limit his possessions, his touches, and we're going to do everything we can to bother him so that he can't get on that offensive roll. And it's happened a couple of times where it was earlier this year where Ant said something to the effect, I don't know what I can do. They got a guy in my face, blah, blah, blah. And what am I supposed to do? And he scored like 15 points. The very next game, he went off for like 55. Didn't he have that 55-point game? Or he had a 50-plus game, I think, this year. That was the very next night. And it's like, I guess he figured it out then. Mm-hmm. But it's like, he's one of the best players in the league. There isn't any question, specifically offensively, when he puts his mind to it defensively. But it's that old, he even said one of his quotes from And it might have been after that game where he only had 15 points, or it was somewhere earlier in the year when he basically said something to the effect, I'm young, I like to score. And I get that, because that's what I think all these guys like to score. We talked about that, about they were all leading scores at every level they've ever played. And he was getting a lot of praise, though, from I think it was it either Gobert or Conley was talking about how he was starting now to accept the fact this is the way it is. So I'm going to get the other guys involved and get on the ball. And, it is all about winning, but it's that one kind of a selfish sport where you like to look at those box scores. I brought this up dozens of times about going to the locker room, and as soon as that guy hands the player his stat sheet, he drops whatever he's doing just to look at how did I do tonight? How many points did I get? How many boards did I have? Assists, steals, what are the things I did well? What was my free throw percentage? And I guess that was part of last night. It's no sin to lose to Cleveland, especially when you're out 2 guys, but now is it Milwaukee next? I don't have my rows in.
It sounds like the Greek Freak is, I believe, going to be out of that game.
Ooh.
So that changes things there. But then it gets very tough after that.
Yeah. Is the Greek Freak, is this they're not looking, is this a load management, or does he have an injury? They're not thinking the Wolves are a skip team right now, are they?
I just heard Marnie talking about it this morning on the Power Trip. So, but after Milwaukee, then it's very challenging. Then you got Oklahoma City, Houston, Oklahoma City again, so a third time in 4 games, and then the Luka Doncic-led LA Lakers.
Well, you can call him Doncic. You can call him either one. You kind of rotate him back and forth. Sometimes you call him Doncic. Sometimes you call him Doncic. All depends what kind of a mood you're in. So a loss, but it's a team that for me is a little bit frustrating too. The inconsistency. There are some highs, but there's too many lows, and a really nice performance gets followed up by a poor one. So, but you know what, Genevieve? We won't give up on this club just quite yet, because we do like parades. We'll pause, come back. More after this here on the Common Man program on the Fan. Genevieve has a keyword, though, for us.
Yeah, the Fan wants to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword bonus at KFAN.com now for a shot of winning. That keyword is bonus. Enter now at KFAN.com. Chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program. Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryan text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
Couple 13-14 pass Common Man program. And Genevieve, the way you delivered that soup to my table, seriously, if this radio thing doesn't work out, food service industry, maybe a waiter.
Finally found something I'm qualified for.
Yeah, I think so, because you did a great job. I do appreciate that.
I'm still waiting for my tip.
Take 2 weeks off.
Yeah?
And quit. This is remarkable. This is the first time in my life, well, not today, but on Sunday, that I've ever had minestrone soup. My wife had never made minestrone soup before. I've seen minestrone soup on the menu before when you go to a restaurant. And, they have their starters and your soup.
This report is sponsored.
Sorry.
That's okay. This food report is sponsored by the Food Network and Gordon Ramsay. It's raw. But I've never, generally they have like 2 or 3 soups to choose from. And because I've never tried it, I'm not afraid to try new foods. Or if I'm at a restaurant, it's going, well, boy, they've got, a cloudy chicken spatzel, or they have a, like a corn chowder or a tomato bisque and a minestrone. I'm always going to opt for the one that I really enjoy. And I love a good corn chowder. Cloudy chicken spatzel soup is really good as long as it's not too cloudy. And then there's and a tomato bisque or corn. Those are just terrific. So this is now my new favorite soup.
Really?
Have you ever had minestrone? I don't know if
I have. Like it. I feel like I've had the one in like Olive Garden before.
carrots and beans and pasta and celery and tomatoes and zucchini, and it's just so good. I'm just so happy, right? I wish we could go to break so I could finish it. I
was thinking about the decision to eat soup on the air.
Yeah.
I suppose you don't get caught in those situations where you're chewing food and then you got to finish chewing it when it's your turn to talk. But I'd also be worried about the slurping sound a little bit on the air. Yeah.
What do you thought? So, I've been in the media business. You know, if you call being on the radio the media, I guess it is. Media is such I feel more like tend to be, for better or worse, get ready for the, you can either blow the own horn or hit the rim shot. I feel like I'm an entertainer, for better or worse. But when you work for a radio station and blah, 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 and you get media passes, you're kind of in the media, right? It's a fun job. It really is. It's, I've always enjoyed it. In the early years, it didn't pay very well. It's better now. But I've been doing it since I went to Brown Institute in 1980. Graduated in the spring of 81, got a job, a month or two after I graduated. And I've been in the business ever since. I've had, some along the way. I've had some chunks of unemployment, been out of work for 3 months or 6 months here. But overall, just steady work in the radio business specifically, and just media in general. And you and I may have discussed this before. You talk about some of the jobs. Any job, let me preface that by saying almost any job in media is better for me, than a lot of blue-collar jobs. I know that running a jackhammer on 494 in the middle of summer when it's 90 degrees, it probably pays well, but I could not do that. That would not be good for me. So I'd rather talk sports. Sports is your whole life, just sports. We've talked about some of those media jobs, like being beat writer for a really bad baseball team, like the Minnesota Twins, for instance, would be just to me just be an awful job, going town to town and setting up in the press box and looking at all the other guys, and you flip open your laptop and you look at each other and you just do the old, how am I going to write this loss and make it sound different? Right? You try to get some variety to it. Same thing if you're the play-by-play guy. That might even be worse, because for 3 hours you got to describe the mess that's happening on the field. Your team wins 60 games, 70 games all season long, right? Still, though, beats working for a living, right? I just found the one job I think that I would rather collect unemployment or steal milk money from little children than have this my assignment. This woman is named Vanessa Cerna, and it looks like she works for page 6 of Y Entertainment, so Yahoo Entertainment.
Okay.
This is the story she had to write Monday. Taylor Swift jets out of New Orleans after Travis Kelce and Chiefs' devastating Super Bowl 2025 loss. Here's what she writes. Taylor Swift jetted out of New Orleans after her boyfriend, Travis Kelce, and the KC Chiefs lost to Philly. The Lover songstress, so that must be one of her songs. Matter of fact, she mentions about 7 of her songs in this piece. The Lover songstress was photographed being escorted onto a private jet while surrounded by several black umbrellas on Monday, according to photos obtained by the Daily Mail. Now, imagine if you're the Daily Mail and you have a photographer and you got to follow celebrities around. While Swift's entire body was not visible, cameras caught a glimpse of her distressed blue jeans, red loafers, and tan socks. So we didn't catch all of her. We did see her up in the suite, so we know that was her because the cameras caught a glimpse of her distressed blue jeans, red loafers, and tan socks. A nice ensemble, tend to be, if I don't mind saying so myself. One of the 14-time Grammy winner's assistants trailed behind her, carrying a bag of snacks and cat litter. That's what one of her assistants was carrying behind her. And so somebody had to report this, breathlessly reporting, what's the assistant carrying? A bag of snacks and cat litter. So I'm assuming it's cat litter to go, because she's on the go. She's jetting around the world, and she must be one of those cat women, right? And she brings it along, and the assistant is required. What did you do today? I brought snacks and cat litter onto the private jet for Taylor Swift. According to the outlet, her plane was headed to Nashville. Swift, 35, was last seen cheering for Kelsey in her star-studded $3 million VIP suite at Caesars Superdome in New Orleans on Sunday. $3 million for that suite.
It's a lot.
Yeah, to say the least. I wouldn't have paid $300 to be in that seat, but this was $3 million for that suite. The Fortnite...
For the chance to get booed.
Yes. The Fortnite singer attended the sporting event with Ice Spice. Do you know who Ice Spice is?
Well, she's not one of the Spice Girls. I know that.
Okay. She attended the sporting event with Ice Spice, Ashley Avignoni, and the Haim sisters, Haim. Do you know who they are?
I don't know who any of them are.
You're the ones that's supposed to keep the show hip now, with it, and wow, and young.
Getting a little out of my demographic.
Esty, Alana, and
you
Dan.
You should be proud of me that I don't know who they are, I don't care enough.
I do, but at the same time, the coroner's office thinks we're supposed to pay attention. You're paying attention to Biggie Smalls and Smallsy Biggs, and I'm paying attention to Eric Burden and the Animals.
Yeah.
And that's probably not as up to date as the coroner's office wants us to be. She appeared stressed while leaning over the rail of her suite as the Eagles took a massive lead. At one point, Swift whispered to those around her and anxiously scratched her head, with one NFL commentator saying the pop star hadn't had much to cheer about. The game wasn't one to remember for the cruel summer singer, as she was also booed by the Eagles when shown on the Jumbotron. Swift was caught off guard by the critics and gave a confused side-eye look to Ice Spice, who's 25. Here's my favorite, though. A lip reader broke down the pop star's reaction. So they had a lip reader.
Yes. They're all over TikTok.
Telling the Daily Mail that she turned to the deli wrapper and asked, what's going on? She wasn't seen after the Eagles defeated the Chiefs, but was spotted looking downcast. Oh, Kelsey. Swift wasn't seen for the Eagles, but Kelsey, 35, was spotted looking downcast while walking to the Love Story singer's suite. An insider told Page Six that Swift is staying by the tight end side and comforting him because she knows how hard he's worked all season and was thrilled to be at the Super Bowl to show her support. And somebody had to actually write that. Somebody had to pay attention to that. Sad, really. Our final break. We'll come back. Controversial Vikings news next here on the Common Man program on the Fan. My sources tell me Greek Freak's out with an injury till the All-Star break. Greek Freak, so it's not as though they're not doing they're not considering the Wolves. The ultimate insult is when you call it a skip game. I think that's what Jimmy Butler used to say about the Wolves when he was Miami. It's a skip game. Someone just texted me this, and you know how we are, Tennessee. We used to have updates at the top and the bottom of every hour and breaking news when it happens. Or, as I've always said, when somebody texts us at the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line at 64686 and says, hey, the Twins just signed first baseman Ty France. And then he says, bonjour. Did you see that anywhere?
Who?
I mean, do we know? I'm not familiar with Ty France. I know that was one of the positions, if you've been...
I literally just saw an Aaron Gleeman tweet 34 seconds ago, so that was very fast.
Okay. What does Aaron say about him? Anything at all? I have no... I got to admit, I'm not paying as close attention to French baseball players as I once did. Tie France. I do know this. I've been, as pitchers and catchers get ready to report, I think Thursday is when they report. The rest of the everyday players show up on Friday, and I think the first Grapefruit League game might even be on Monday. That quickly. And I read a piece, and I don't know if it was Athletic, Fish Wrap Factory. It might have been a Danny Hayes. I'm not sure with the Athletic. Maybe it was West Side. Maybe it was MLB.com. Who knows where it was? But it was just talking about, some of the needs for the Twins. I think they're close. They need 4 infielders, 3 outfielders, 3 starting pitchers, 3 bullpen guys, and I think they'll be in pretty good shape. But first base is the one spot because Santana, who did very well last year for us, he didn't play. It was like 90 games, but he hit the ball pretty well, and he won a Gold Glove over at first base, if I'm not mistaken. But first base was the one position they were concerned about. They were talking about either Edouard Julien or another name of somebody else who hasn't really played there a lot. So if this Ty France character is our guy, maybe he's supposed to be our new first baseman for the club.
Sounds like he plays first base, but even on Baseball Reference says first baseman, second baseman, third baseman. Bats right, throws right, 5'11", 215 pounds. He was drafted by the San Diego Padres. Looks like he played a year and a half there and then was sent to Seattle.
Okay.
Where he spent 3.5 seasons with Seattle. He had some decent numbers in Seattle.
Okay.
2020 as a whole, between the two teams, he hit .305, only 4 home runs, 23 RBI that year in 43 games. But 2021 in Seattle, he hit .291 with 18 home runs, 73 RBI. 2022, he was an all-star, 274, 20 home runs, 83 RBI. Numbers have dropped a bit since then. Last year, he played for 2 teams, Seattle and Cincinnati. He hit .234, 13 home runs, 51 RBI.
This Bradshaw, Brian KFAN text line, text says, he's a stud. Believe he played for Seattle. Is he a stud? I mean, you did mention that he had some nice numbers there for at least a portion of his career, but I don't know if I would refer to him as a stud, but maybe he is, and we can use all the studs that we can get. It's interesting that came in because I did want to talk Twins a little bit because pitchers and catchers do report on Thursday, and I think that somebody again on the KFAN text line said, "Well, you guys can say what you want about the team." Maybe it wasn't in that tone of voice that what it seemed like, but many of the national experts, so-called experts, the people that are paying closer attention to Major League Baseball than both you and I are picking the Twins to win the division, despite the fact that they completely collapsed last year and finished 4th in a 5-team division, in a division which 3 of the other teams, those teams being Kansas City, Cleveland, and Detroit, all made it to postseason play. And I think, did Kansas City play New York to start? And I thought they gave them pretty much everything they wanted. I don't remember the exact round. And did Cleveland have to play Detroit in the first round? I don't remember how it went. But I thought that I know we're not, I don't think many fans are, what do you call it? Moral victory people. But
Kansas City swept Baltimore first round. They won 2-0.
That's right.
And then they lost to New York in 4 games. They lost 3 games to 1.
Okay. And then did Cleveland play Detroit to start postseason play last year?
Yes, because Detroit beat Houston.
Yeah, okay.
And then Cleveland beat Detroit in 5, 3 games to 2.
So 2 American League teams in the Central got out of the first round, and so they comported themselves very well. I'm not going to pretend that I know who's coming back on those teams, who's left, what the makeup of the team looks like, but I would assume they all made postseason play, and more than likely one of those teams is probably going to take a step back. One will probably be about the same, and another might take a step forward. But I don't necessarily think, I'm not going to do the old jaw dropped, aghast at how could a team that collapsed like they did at the end, and it was a monumental collapse. I don't think it's 69 Chicago Cubs like or 1950. I think it was 54, the Brooklyn Dodgers had a 13-game lead over the Giants like in July and ended up losing. That was back when it was the New York Giants and the Brooklyn Dodgers. I think those were the two teams that, I know it was the Giants and they came back to win the division, but still, we discussed this a couple of times in the last 2 weeks where the Twins they had like, chance of making postseason play. They were like at 95%. All they had to do was just not get in the way of themselves, and they were going to be in the playoffs, and they missed it. But it's interesting, you know how I love power rankings, Major League Baseball, CBSSports.com. They've released, I don't know if this is their first power rankings. I almost believe it's not, because they'll have the rank of the team and then what the change was. And some of these teams have gone up and down. So unless that was just because of a change, because of free agent signings, teams haven't even reported yet, and they're already being changed in their rank. But as you would expect, the defending World Series champion Dodgers, who I think did nothing but add to their payroll, they're ranked at number 1. The Phillies 2, the Braves at number 3, Yankees at 4. Then you have your Mets, Rangers, Diamondbacks, Astros, Orioles, and Padres rounding out your top 10. Scroll down a little farther, Tennessee. I mean, if this is any indication of how the season will play out, it looks like we might be in for an exciting race in the NL or the AL Central. They have the Guardians at 13, Tigers at 14, Royals at 15, and Twins at 16.
Wow.
So they have all four packed together in a spot where
best of the lousiest of the best.
Exactly. And I think the order they have them in is interesting. Now, again, these are guys that are, I don't know how many are on the panel here at CBS Sports and all these other national. Everybody's got a different opinion on clubs. I mean, some people would say, for instance, Tennessee, that Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson are a better wide receiver combo than Chris Carter and Randy Moss.
Yes.
Some people would say that. So some people would say that every time they see the color yellow, they immediately think of Caitlin Clark in the Iowa Hawkeyes. So a lot of people view things differently. But I do find it interesting that it seemed like a higher percentage when they put all these so-called experts together had the Twins winning the division in this power rankings. They have the Twins in the of those four. They're ranked lower than the other three. I like this though because you and I discussed this with the NFC Central this past year. Yeah, I know you were thinking, well, yeah, it's because you're a Lions fan, so of course you liked it. Well, I'm a Vikings and a Lions fan. And I liked that the division was competitive like that. I mean, think about it. Green Bay lost 5 games. Now, Chicago fell apart. At one time, they were, I think, 6-2. I think, wasn't there some note at that stage of the season that it was the deepest into a season that any division had, all 4 teams that far above 500? It was something to that effect. And then it all started with the Hail Mary pass, in which the Bears lost, and then it kind of went. Did other kids say pear-shaped? Isn't that an old saying?
That's what PA says.
Yeah, it went pear-shaped is what happened, and but man, those 3 teams. Green Bay lost 5 games, and 4 of them were to 2 teams: Detroit. Yeah. And Minnesota. The Vikings lost
3
games.
2 of them were to Detroit.
And 2 of them were to Detroit. And then they lost 4 games all season, 2 to Detroit, 2 to the Rams. So, and Detroit ended up losing, was it 3? They lost to Tampa, Buffalo, and Washington. And I was shocked.
Playoffs, yeah.
I was shocked. that Washington won that game. I was just stunned by that. But I like when the division's competitive. It's more fun. I mean, if you're I guess the end game, the end goal is to win the division, qualify for postseason, see if you can make a run. So if it's less competitive, it's easier to do that. If you're playing in a bad division and you got a big lead halfway, especially in baseball, you can actually. I'm not saying you're setting up your rotation in July, but you can play it a little more loosey-goosey and rest guys and change your matchups and such, I think.
Well, if you look over the last 20 plus years with the Twins in the AL Central, sure, the division not being very good has been beneficial to the Twins in terms of winning divisions and be able to make the playoffs and stuff like that. But have you ever gotten excited about any of their divisional rivalry matchups during the regular season? For most years, Kansas City was awful. For most years, Detroit's awful. And you're playing them, well, for a lot of the time, they're playing, 19 games against those teams? And you never really got excited for those games. And I don't know, if Detroit can back up, and they were young last year, if they can back up that season, and Kansas City can back up that season, and Cleveland's still in the mix, and Twins in the mix, it'll be harder to win the division, it'll be harder to make the playoffs, but to your point, I'm more likely to tune into those games because they'll be more fun to watch when you're actually competent teams. It's better baseball.
I tend to agree. I'm wholeheartedly in lockstep with you. Couple of text messages that came in on the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line, or as we like to call it, the Holla Hotline, 64686. It says, and the NFC North was 0-3 in the playoffs, and they were indeed. Green Bay got bounced, Minnesota got bounced, Detroit all in the...
Because they beat up on each other.
Well, they did. That's exactly what happened. I think this text message is referring to the Twins. It says the players gave up after the ownership did nothing at the trade deadline. I don't believe that. I don't believe they gave up and said, well, I'm not even really going to try and it's over. We have no chance. It's hard to give up in you're an individual sport within a team sport. Like when you're going up to bat, you're batting for yourself. You're batting for your own stats. You're batting for future contracts. I don't buy that you would just give up because ownership didn't spend money. And you were still in first place, too.
Yes.
I mean, so it's like the team was still playing well. I know you can be annoyed by it. The famous line from Johan Santana when he said, this team's always planning in the future. Maybe some of us won't be a part of that future. Matter of fact, I think teams might actually rally around that a little bit. So we'll show them. I guess that's what we got, guys. It's us in the locker rooms. Let's go play. I don't think they'll go, well, the hell with it then. Let's just not even try anymore. I don't believe that. Bears were 4-2. Sorry, not 6-2. I apologize. I thought they were going to go to. I thought for sure they were going to 5-2. They had that game wrapped up. Then there's this one. And it goes back to how we started the show today. How are we supposed... Sorry, got another text message coming in. How are we supposed to feel about A-Rod owning the Timberwolves? I'll be honest, I didn't like it when he owned the Twins. It's a pretty good line. I don't know what to make of it. When it was first announced that Glenn was going to sell the team to Lori and A-Rod, and they were doing this, and apparently, if I remember correctly, most transactions for pro sports teams aren't done bit by bit. It's like, show me the money. Do you have it or not? I want the money up front, $1.5 billion. Give me $20. And this was, and if I remember correctly, it was reported that it was like, well, it was an opportunity to let A-Rod and Lori kind of get a feel for owning an NBA franchise, because obviously neither one had owned one before. It had really not been, A-Rod played ball, but I don't think he was really, was he ever a limited in Major League Baseball? I don't know. I don't think either one had any prior experience.
Well, they tried to buy the Mets.
Right.
And it fell through.
But I don't think either one had any prior experience owning or operating a pro sports team. So that was kind of unusual to begin with, and then it all of a sudden, I don't remember the exact day the news broke, but all of a sudden Glenn pulls the offer off the table. Because Glenn claimed you were supposed to add the last 40% that would have got you the majority ownership. You would have been the majority. Glenn would have then been limited. He had had just a little tiny bit of the team left, I think. And then there's limiteds all over, I guess. I don't know how many there are. I think there's probably hundreds.
Hundreds?
Probably not hundreds, but there are probably a number of well-to-do, not well-to-do like Glenn, but people that are well-to-do that, hey, I own 0.5% of the Timberwolves. Yeah, look at this. I own 1% of the Wolves. So you got your limiteds, right? And Glenn always claimed, I think most people felt that the reason he was trying to pull a fast one on him, if you believe that's what he was trying to do, and it kind of looks like maybe he was because, well, gosh, now the team's really good. He's thinking, man, I don't want to miss out on
the value of the team doubled.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. I think a lot of people thought he was just trying to pull it because the team was better. That was part of it. But the other thing was the team went from $1.5 million is worth almost 2.5.
3.1 according to Forbes.
3.1 now. So when
the other part of that too is I don't know what the Lynx were valued before, but after the year Caitlin Clark had, like the WNBA franchise, I mean, it's not going to go up anywhere near the NBA, but in terms of what you bought it for and how much it's going to make now.
That's true. And all along, I thought it was just cut and dried, where it was like, why are we? And as I said at the beginning of the show, it must be much more complicated than that, because those. I can't imagine what that sale agreement looked like. I mean, it's probably as thick as the Chicago phone directory back in the phone book days, right? With a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross. I thought it was as simple as you made the deadline or you didn't. If you didn't, the team's not yours, and you can pull the offer off the table legally. If they made the deadline, you're out of luck, Glenn. The arbiters ruled 2-1, so it had to be more because if you're still ruling, there had to be how you interpreted that contract or interpret the timeline, whatever it was. But Glenn's out as long as the team now has the money for the rest. Lori and A-Rod have enough money to pay for it, and the Board of Governors signs off on it on a 23-30 vote, and I'm assuming they will. I don't know what to think. I mean, if you believe what Lori says, he said last year, the quote was again in the papers, in the websites yesterday when this was announced. He'd said last summer, I'm flush with cash. I've got millions and millions to invest. So they want a new stadium. I read privately financed, but are they going to be asking for public money? I don't know. Are they going to spend over and get into that second apron? Are they going to say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and spend the money? Now, there are other punishments, as you know. Draft picks can be effective, and this in other business like things can be affected, moves and such like that by going on to that second. Do they even have a third apron? I don't even know. Can they go that far? But it's an old cliche, but cliches are often, it's because they're true in many cases. Talk is cheap, so we'll see if they end up really spending that kind of money. Remember, though, the team is not theirs yet. It still has to be, they have to make another payment, and then it has to be approved by the Board of Governors. Teneby, thanks so much for having me today.
Hey, great job.
You did a great job today. You and the selection committee putting together the Preposterous Statement Tournament. We thank Cove and JG for analyzing with us today. The PST tournament begins tomorrow, where you can vote on KFAN's X/Twitter account. We'll have that at 1:30 for you tomorrow. We enjoyed our visit with you. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock because it's the Ben Johnson Show, and the Mark Rosen will be here too as well. Stick around. JG, Big Ticket, they're next here on The Fan.
Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon. And good night, Minnesota. And good night, folks. And good night, Mrs. Calabash. Wherever you are.
Listen back to any of Common Man's programs by podcasting on the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.